Welcome again to another episode of JADU Lifestyles, where you get a life and you get to live it too. Our last episode, we talked about journaling and why it's important to journal. I shared a little bit of my story and how I got into journaling. And today I want to talk a little bit more about some of the benefits of journaling. Journaling, most times every single person that has lived this life has encountered some kind of trauma, some kind of event in their life that has left a permanent mark on them. A lot of times we have a wonderful brain that we can suppress some things that are hurtful and, it's not pleasant to feel, but for the most part we feel. And a lot of times we live in the past because we go over the hurt over and over and over again because, one, we think about what we could have done differently, what we could have said differently. We think of, could we have done something or did we contribute to this trauma? So it goes over and over in our head. The problem with that is that whatever we focus on is what we get more of. So therefore, if we focus on the past and the trauma, we tend to manifest or bring more into our life. So getting it out of your system is actually one of the really great things to do. Trauma can lead us to depression. It can lead us to drugs and addictions and things like that. If we get it out, we have more room. We can know where to go with it. We can know what we feel like and how to deal with it. Recently, in the last few years, we've seen a lot of mass shootings. We've seen them in schools, we've seen them in musical events and things like that. Hundreds of people have died through shootings. The survivors, the people who either were injured and recovered or not injured at all, but was still in the event, have to live with the trauma of that event in their life. And it will take a toll on our bodies. Our bodies will feel things. We will remember things. We will, think about it. But we want to get over that shock and that feeling, because it could disrupt our sleep patterns, it could disrupt our equilibrium, it could disrupt our lives. And one of the ways that I have found to go back through my trauma and get rid of it is to use journaling as that way to do that. So I would write about what I feel, no thought about grammar and spelling, things like that. You just want to write what you feel. It's like going through a tunnel. When you're going through it the first time, you don't know where it's going to end. You know there's an end, but you don't know where it's going to end. You don't know what's going to happen. So you may be a little bit fearful. You may be excited because you're anticipating. You may even fast forward, think about what's at the end of the tunnel. But when you're coming back through the tunnel, it's familiar. At least most of it is familiar. So you're going back in the opposite direction, and the feelings are different. You're not as fearful maybe because now you know what to expect. The thing is with trauma is that when you go back through the tunnel, you do have to go through the trauma again. And of course, it's going to raise feelings probably similar to what you had when it was actually happening, but it will not be as sharp or as painful. And once you go back through the trauma, it is almost the healing process starts so that you could move forward. You could go to the next step and the next step and the next step. It's not saying that it's not going to ever bother you again, but I can tell you, one of the most probably horrific events I've gone through is losing a baby, and which was the second one. I lost 3 of them altogether, and the second one was the most painful for me. So before I wrote about it and wrote about my feelings, when I talked about it, I would cry, because that's a sign that you're still going through the pain of the trauma. It's still real and active, no matter how many years down the road it is. But when I journaled about it, my feelings, in fact, I had to come to the point where I told myself, I came to the realization that, yes, it wasn't fair. It shouldn't have happened to me. And, I gave myself permission to feel sorry for myself. Before that, anytime something traumatic happened, I would just keep going. I would pick up and I would keep going to the next event and the next event and the next event, with that trauma not being healed or addressed. So when I decided to give myself permission to feel sorry for myself, it took me 3 weeks before my brain said, okay, enough, now go back. But when I was out of this time of, I don't know if you call it reflection or feeling sorry for myself or whatever name you put to it, I realized that there were some things that did not have the same effect on me as they did prior to this time. And I want to strongly, strongly recommend that you give yourself permission to feel sorry for the things. Having a relationship that ended is traumatic. It's like somebody dying. You have to grieve through the process. When you lose somebody, they've died, you want to go through that grieving process and process the information. So even if it's a relationship where the person is still alive, a divorce, a separation, you want to go through that trauma, allow yourself time to grieve over it, and then watch yourself evolve. Now, I'm not saying that everything is healed within me, although I've been journaling now for at least 15 years on a regular basis, but I'm not saying that everything is healed. What I am saying is this: if as you go through the years and you write, more and more will come out, because sometimes we have things that are suppressed within our brain. For instance, I have probably 1 or 2 memories of my dad living with us, although since 1969, he has been there in my life until I left home. And even then, he's still alive, actually. He just turned 83 years old this February. But I don't have many memories, and I still have to come to the knowledge and the awareness of why. I'm not quite sure why I suppressed those memories. I'm not sure if I was focused on one thing or if he was gone. I don't remember. But lately, I have been coming up or remembering some stuff from my relationship with him when I was young, very, very young, before I was 7 years old. I remembered my relationship with him, and I realized that it has influenced my decisions with respect to a relationship with the opposite sex. It has influenced my relationship, my relationship with my dad, or what I was looking for, that love I was looking for that was there when I was 7 years old, or before I was 70 years old. I was looking for it as an adult. And my father is still alive, so it's not that I didn't have the love, but in my head, I think I just compartmentalized it and put it somewhere where I couldn't find it. Journaling has brought that out. So I want to encourage my listeners to go back into your experience. If you feel stuck, if you feel frustrated, if you feel like you're not progressing, or you want to go somewhere and you don't know how, or you want to take your business somewhere or your life somewhere, or you want to start enjoying more things, we all have hang-ups. We have idiosyncrasies. We have little things that, oh, I'm afraid somebody's going to laugh at me, or they're going to make fun of me, or we have those things, and those things, those negative things, actually stay with us longer than the happy events and the exciting events. It's the negative events stay with us, and sometimes I think it's because it's made such a dent in our brain that it's there, and as soon as something else triggers it, we remember. I found a really, really good book. It's called When It Feels Like the Sky is Falling, How to Find Hope in an Uncertain World by H. Norman Wright. He is actually a counselor that works with people who have experienced trauma, like the shootings and things like that. And he goes in and he sits with groups of people. He sits with individuals and he helps them through the trauma. And one of the things that he recommends is writing out what you remember of the event. For instance, one part of the book he talked about, where at nighttime when you go to lay down, to go to sleep, and you can't sleep, he says, just write down what your brain is thinking, what's going on with you right now mentally. Write it out, and eventually it will help to give you some perspective on it and help to give you some peace on it, which is really what we need when we've been through trauma. There's a saying that time heals everything, but sometimes it doesn't heal it until we deal with it. Time will go by, and we will think about the things that has happened, the traumatic events that has happened, the hurtful things that has happened, and sometimes we can carry that without really dealing with it. We can get older, we can get old, we can become seniors, we can die with it if we don't deal with it. I know people who, they don't like surprises. Why? Because they may have had an event in their life that happened that it was a surprise, and they want to know, they want to be in control and know what is going to happen before it happens. Surprises can be good things, but they can be bad things. Most times, event that happen in our life that is truly traumatic may be unexpected. We know that we are going to die one day, but do we think about that? We have things like we can get a heart attack or we can have a stroke, and we probably worry about that and think, am I going to have it? But we can know what to do. Today's technology, we can know what to do. We can know, doctors have to wait to check to see things that could happen before. They have now nuclear testing and things like that they could go in, they could get pictures, they could see. So we can take control of our health. We can take control of our life. We may not be able to stop an earthquake from happening or a tornado from happening, and we still may be traumatized by it because we've lost somebody or even got injured from it. But there's still some things that we could prepare. This is one of the things that H. Norman Wright talked about in the book. He said, be prepared. Think about what is the worst case scenario that could happen. The thing is, once our body or mind has gone through the worst case scenario, if the worst case scenario actually happens, we will have, at least it would have gone through our minds, and we would kind of be a little bit familiar with it. So, for instance, we don't know if our life would be cut short in a day or 2 days or 3 days or 10 days or 10 years. We don't have knowledge as to when our last day will be. So making preparations such as creating a living will, creating a will, actually making sure that things that you want to give somebody or your children or pass on as a legacy is designated in writing so that a person who's left behind would actually be able to carry out your wishes. It's important. It's not that you're calling your dad And some people are superstitious in that they think that if they get these things ready, that they are actually preparing the way for them to die faster. But that's not necessarily true.